focusing, let's say today, on early stage startups, they don't need bloat. They don't need, a 3-month cycle of hiring followed by a 3-month ramp to figure out that it didn't work. When they could bring on someone like myself on the sales side or Success Scaled on the CS side and do something more of, hey, this is the result we need. We're going to achieve it faster, then we're going to backfill at a fraction of the cost.
What's up, lifers, and welcome to the Daily Stand-Up with Lifetime Value, where we're giving you fresh new customer success ideas every single day. I got my man JP with us. JP, do you want to say hi?
Ready to strip that baby down.
That'll make no sense without the context.
Give him the context. Give him the context, please.
Nope, I will not. And we have Rob with us. Rob, can you say hi, please?
How you doing?
And we have Jonathan with us. Jonathan, can you say hi, please?
Hey, everyone.
Hello, hello. And I am your host. My name is Dillon Young. Jonathan, thank you so much for being here. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yep. My name is Jonathon Garcia. I'm joining you all right now from, unfortunately, not so sunny Stockholm. It was much nicer earlier, but happy to be here.
Happy to have
Stockholm
you here.
syndrome. Do you?
Oh, geez. Go ahead, Jonathan. Do you want to dignify that dad joke with a response?
Stockholm syndrome. I mean, if it was 2 hours earlier, it would have been a totally different view. And yeah, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm in love with this place. But right now, not so much.
Yeah. I feel held hostage by this place, perhaps, right? But not right now.
Yeah.
Gross
The weather from Estonia followed me here, unfortunately. Sorry, Sweden.
Jonathan, you know what we do here? We ask one simple question of every single guest, and that is, what is on your mind when it comes to customer success? I would love to hear what that is for you.
Yeah, so the topic that I wanted to talk about was how the future is fractional, probably for most senior and also junior roles. I have my own company. It's called Globally or Globally, to play on words. There's another dad joke there. And yeah, just the fact that I think that now the trends are for senior level roles and entry level roles. I think the future is going to be much more fractional and less just full-time hires.
Okay, so you said senior, but you also said entry. Is there anything in the middle, or do you think that we're entering this world where it's sort of like everybody is for hire with a skill set across multiple companies?
I would say the sweet spot that I'm seeing is if it's a larger scaled company, they're going to want to have people that are full-time that they can depend on and have some kind of a forecasting, whether that's in sales, like what I do as a fractional AE, but I work very closely with fractional customer success and support. And then if it's more of a startup, I see that they want to have more of a founding presence fractionally to build out the process and then copy paste, and then they'll hire on cheaper people that will be full-time. So that's what I'm seeing so far.
Yeah. Part-time, high-level expertise.
Yeah.
Is how I think of fractional a lot of the time. Sounds like you think about it the same way. JP, what does this make you think of?
I mean, what's that commercial? Want to get away?
Do you want to get away? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, I say that in just in terms of like the idea of, I think, new work, as it were, not being sort of beholden to the office, sort of opens up something that I think is really great for people to be able to show up and do their best work. I mean, if somebody can do their best work from home and, that's what remote means to them, and that's fine, that's great. If someone can do the work and be able to travel and their company doesn't have any tax implications to them traveling, which is one of the hiccups that I've heard with some people doing this, then I think that that's great as well. I mean, I see it as one of those things. It makes me think about the future of work. Just the ability to just not be tied to an office, the ability to sort of own your time, which I think allows a person to just be able to show up a lot more as themselves. I mean, ideally, just be able to show up fully when they are there. I haven't done it too much, so I can't say from personal experience, but I do like remote work. I do like it.
I do wonder though. Jonathan, you said this from it sounded like a standpoint of optimism, right?
Yeah.
Flexibility, independence. But I think, look, if I want to put my pessimist hat on, as though I ever took it off, I talk a lot about the leverage hiring companies, particularly in America, have over their employees already. Does this make it even easier to treat them like, I'll just say trash, like widgets, like single-use plastic, like we've seen folks say before? I worry about that, even though I do actually, I'm very excited by what you said. The future is fractional, and I love that idea because I get bored, right? I want to keep trying something new, doing new stuff, meeting new people, looking at new businesses. But do you have any concern about that, Jonathan, before we kick it over to Rob?
No, I mean, I've been thinking a lot about this, and a few of the statements that I came up with, like if I had to distill this down, the future being fractional, is for founders especially and startups. What they should be hiring for is outcomes, not people. They shouldn't be just be trying to fill up slots, so to speak. And so this is, I'd love to talk about this again later on, but focusing, let's say today, on early stage startups, they don't need bloat. They don't need, a 3-month cycle of hiring followed by a 3-month ramp to figure out that it didn't work, when they could bring on someone like myself on the sales side or Success Scaled on the CS side and do something more of, hey, this is the result we need. We're going to achieve it faster, then we're going to backfill at a fraction of the cost and then scale the right way, as opposed to just hiring for the sake of filling a spot. So I get what you're saying about, in the future, could that make us more disposable? Yes, but at the same time, we're always disposable. It's just now they'll figure out who's disposable faster, and they'll find the talent that can help mature the, full-time hires afterwards. I don't know if that made sense, but
no,
that's
it
where
makes
I was
100% sense. I think the concern I had, and this, it's not a debate. I want to give Rob an opportunity in here, but the concern I have is if everybody's not on the same page. So Jonathan, you run a business where it's agreed upon that this is the relationship. Rob, you run a business where it's the same thing. But like in a JP's case, is he comfortable? And is that the scenario he wants to be considered, quote unquote, fractional? And I know the answer is no, but I wonder if employers are increasingly wanting that relationship. And that's also not me blaming anybody who offers fractional services. But Rob, why don't you jump in?
Yeah, I think it's such an interesting, it's sort of almost like a little social contract you have with your employer, between some company and Globally, or some company and what was the customer success one? You guys, I just want to write that down just in case. Success Scaled rolls right off the tongue.
Where you put your logo on the screen, I guess.
No, so here's what's really interesting, because fractional is a relatively new concept, and part-time work is not a relatively new concept. Freelance comes from the days when people would hire literally free mercenaries, lancers, people who would hold a lance. Like that shit is old as old. But this notion of like fractional work is relatively new in the modern work sense. I like what JP said about like the future of work, essentially. What we are at this sort of cusp where we're not even just introducing fractional, but now we're starting to see these little breakouts of like, what does fractional mean? Does it mean part-time? Does it mean consulting?
Advisory.
Does it mean advisory work? Does it mean operations work? And I think what's really innovative about Jonathan's model is I haven't often seen people do fractional work at the more contracting level, right? Of like, for example, like founding AE. That's a really unique position to take to the market. And it's one that I value. It kind of makes me think of like, Jonathan and I always use football analogies. So it's like kind of like bringing in like a Josh McCown during a rebuild, right? Somebody who's a journeyman who's been at all these different teams.
I hope he thinks more of you than that, Jonathan.
I was like, who's he going to use?
I love
it. Could have been
Aaron
Ryan
Rodgers.
Fitzpatrick.
Aaron Rodgers.
McCowntown, USA. McCowntown, USA. Aaron Rodgers is a good one. Jameis Winston.
No.
Jacoby Brissett.
Anyway,
I don't know.
keep going.
Anyway, but the thing is, so
Nick
I think
Foles.
it was as I tracked this conversation, I thought it was interesting because we talked about like sort of the perspective of the practitioner, right? And it sounds great. Increased variety, lots of learnings, so much freedom and autonomy, the ability to travel the world and do cool stuff like what Jonathan's doing with his dog, which, by the way, check it out if you haven't already. It's super cool. I don't know anyone else who's figured it out besides Jonathan. And even Jonathan, I hate to tell you, haven't fully figured it out. But hey, I'm here to be honest as your friend. But there's a lot of downsides too. Like the income risk is brutal, right? The fact that like the expectation setting, as you said, Dillon, is brutal because a lot of times you're caught in this weird middle ground between like, what am I actually expected to do and what would be enough to satisfy my client, the company. And I think that that's where the conversation shifted now to like, what does it mean to be a company bringing on fractional talent? What does it mean to inject a catalyst into the system that gets the whole thing started or moves it to the next level? And, doesn't always work. But when it does, it's a beautiful thing. It's like you'll see lightning changes faster than any other, traditional method, like what Jonathan was saying. When you go out to market, you hire for 3 months, you ramp for 2 months, and then finally you hope to see some results. It's a totally different model.
Jonathan, that is our time, but I guess what I'd like to tease out next time, and a question I have is how you properly, the fascination for me is really how do you set those expectations? How do you manage that relationship? Because I think that's where the best fractional folks win, is because there's a bit of arbitrage there, right? Of like, okay, well, how do I bring on as many customers as possible and still deliver something of value to them, but my margins are higher, or I'm doing the work that I specialize in and that I'm the best at and literally nothing else. Like I'm really interested in that conversation. So I'd love to have you back and talk more about that. But you cannot return until you're in a different country and a different time zone. So just figure that out and then come back, Jonathan. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. Well, until that time, we have got to say goodbye.
Later, guys.
You've been listening to The Daily Stand-Up by Lifetime Value. Please note that the views expressed in these conversations are attributed only to those individuals on this recording and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of their respective employers. For all general inquiries, please reach out via email to hello@lifetimevaluemedia.com. To learn more about advertising on The Daily Stand-Up and the Lifetime Value Media Network, please reach out via email to advertising@lifetimevaluemedia.com. Find us on YouTube at Lifetime Value and find us on the socials at Lifetime Value Media. Until next time.